we are determined to invest in agriculture. Fundamentally because, and the whole mantra is increase in yield, because entrepreneurial capitalism is embedded in the very psyche of the average Nigerian. But why we will have 133 million Nigerians suffering from multidimensional poverty? Our people lack the wherewithal to be placed in Jeffrey Sachs' first ladder of development. But the president is determined to reposition the Nigerian nation, activate the river basin development authorities for enhanced food production and livelihood support to Nigerians. Along this way, the president has already approved the infusion of huge quantum of funds towards repositioning our security architecture, because we have similar problems with Somalia and Kenya, especially in the northeast and the northwest sub-regions of the country. We are repositioning our security architecture to provide support to farms and farmers. And nothing fascinated me much more than the school feeding system. I listened with rapt attention because it's the greatest game changer, especially for the poor, because the young ones at their formative stages, food is very essential in the formation of their brainware. So it's absolutely essential. We are with you, we'll align with you, we'll partner with you towards meeting our global objectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And along the same themes, Your Excellency, Prime Minister of Niger, talk to us then about your country's challenges, your experiences in mobilizing domestic and external financing to transform food systems in your country, and what other challenges you are facing along the route, and what is working as well.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais parler en français. Donc, mettez vos écouteurs, s'il vous plaît. Merci, madame. Au Niger, vous savez, nous sommes un pays qui est très affecté par les changements climatiques. Et compte tenu de cet aspect, nous avons élaboré une politique qui consiste à assurer l'alimentation et l'autosuffisance en production agricole de notre pays. Cette politique que nous appelons l'initiative 3N, les Nigériens nourrissent les Nigériens, comporte tous les volets allant de la production agricole en passant par la commercialisation et allant jusqu'à la nutrition. C'est donc une politique complexe qui couvre à la fois la protection du sol, l'amélioration des rendements, la connectivité au marché, la qualité de la production et également la qualité de l'alimentation. Nous avons, en accord et en collaboration avec la Banque mondiale et le FIDA, essayé de mesurer la part du financement qui va à l'agriculture. Il s'est trouvé que en 4 années, de 2019 à 2022, le Niger a augmenté de 70% son financement qui va en direction de l'agriculture. Sur ces 70%, 40% sont consacrés à l'investissement agricole, 26% à la vulgarisation agricole et 23% à l'alimentation, 8% à l'environnement. Évidemment, cela signifie que au Niger, nous avons un programme assez conséquent où l'agriculture apparaît comme une grande priorité du budget national. Pour financer ce programme, 24% des ressources proviennent des ressources fiscales directes du pays et 76% des financements extérieurs, notamment des emprunts. Évidemment, les emprunts eux-mêmes étant considérés comme des ressources remboursables, on peut considérer que là également seront remboursés sur les ressources nationales. Donc voilà l'expérience du Niger. Nous avons été sélectionnés comme un pays pilote pour mesurer un outil mis en place par la Banque mondiale et le FIDA pour mesurer les financements en direction du secteur agricole. Cet outil est très efficace et nous avons utilisé la collaboration de tous les services qui interviennent dans le domaine de la production agricole pour en pouvoir bénéficier, pour avoir mesuré les effets. C'est donc une expérience, en tout cas, très positive qui pourra être vulgarisée à l'échelle du continent, pour voir même à l'échelle internationale. Merci beaucoup de votre aimable attention.
You in on a secret. I cannot tell you how excited IFAD and the World Group Bank are about this tool, and you have touched on it. We're going to elaborate on it in the second segment because it speaks to exactly what I was trying to say earlier, that we're not just talking, that there is a tool, it does work, there are solutions, and Niger is an exciting case study. We'll hear more from you about that later on. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let me thank you all, Your Excellencies, for getting us started today. I'm going to invite you to take your seats, to return to your seats. We thank you so very much for highlighting your country-specific circumstances, but also talking candidly about why we need to reform the international financing architecture. Thanks indeed. Thank you. I would like now to invite the president of IFAD to join me on stage. Alvaro Lario, please come on stage. Thank you. And to be a part of our conversation as well, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist for the World Bank, Indamit Gill. Thank you. First, before we get started on the challenging issues on financing food systems transformation, I would like to get your impressions on what you heard in our first panel, the realities, the challenges, the political instability, and of course, access to funding. Your impressions.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. We're very excited about this summit after 2 years, and we're very much looking forward to further solutions and financing for many of these countries. Actually, we work in the 4 countries and we have very exciting programs in all of them, so it doesn't come as a surprise as many of the challenges as well as the opportunities we are seeing. One of the positive sides, I would say, from 2 years ago is actually that now we all speak the same language, and this language comes to the national pathways. There's plans in place where we actually can all mobilize funding and we can know what are the gaps. We're also excited about the new tool that has been developed between ourselves to really be able to see where the gaps are and also mobilize this money throughout for the gaps. The Prime Minister, President, they were mentioning also how much it has changed during the last years. If we think about it, we have had further conflicts, a big war, we have seen a pandemic, inflation, so the challenges have been massive. At the same time, we have also been much more aware that we are all very interconnected and that the challenges that happen in one place in the world are affecting many others. So this also can bring us together. So we're very much looking forward to continue mobilizing financing and seeing how we can support and invest in many of these transformations. Thank you.
Indamit, your impressions first.
So I would also like to start by thanking IFAD and especially Alvaro for this excellent collaboration that has led to this session. And I was struck by what the leaders from African countries said. So I was struck also, ma'am, because before we get into the structural issues that are slowing down the food system's transformations, there are, so I just want to talk about a few things that make this problem very urgent, as my president mentioned. So in the first quarter of this year, we actually published the World Bank's Commodity Markets Outlook that reported that domestic food price inflation in emerging markets and developing economies was 20% in the first half of this year. And so you might ask, how is this consistent with all the reports that you're reading, that food prices were expected to fall by 8% this year and 3% next year and so on? And the reason is that when you read about global food prices in the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal and so on, they are cited in dollars, right? But when consumers in countries like Niger, countries like Nigeria and Somalia and others pay, they pay in domestic currencies. So they pay in Pakistani rupees or Egyptian pounds or Ghanaian cedi, right? And so if these, so you can get food prices falling in dollars, but if these currencies have then depreciated, what you end up with is domestic food price inflation that can be massive. So for example, if you look at these three countries, Pakistan and Egypt and Ghana, they had among the five worst performing, they had the five worst performing currencies in the first half of this year. They had essentially depreciation of more than 30–40%. Now, the other thing is, of course, that we are talking about falling inflation rates, right? But it means that prices are just going up more slowly, right? They're still going up, right? And so if you look at the global food price index in inflation-adjusted terms, it will remain at the second highest level since 1975. Okay? So you have very, very high food prices. And the reason why it's the second highest is because last year was the highest. Okay? So you have very, very high food prices. So that is the reality of food prices. And we now have two or three things happening at the same time. The first one, of course, is the war in Ukraine and some of the changes that happened last week that will probably lead to an increase in the price of wheat. And then you have developments in Asia where you actually have bans on rice prices. And by the way, you can't even fault the governments for actually doing this because climate change is making yields drop over time. So we have these two agendas, ma'am. We have the first agenda is this immediate price increase thing. And the second, of course, is that we have the longer term structural issues, especially climate change, which is leading to these price increases over time.
All right, so you've given us a sense of where we stand on financing food system transformation. But I guess the big question, especially the people who were mentioned in the first segment, the poorest of the poor, the people who are in the lower rungs of this ladder, they want to know, is the global community and the private sector, are they living up to the challenge of transforming the international financing system, of increasing financing so that food systems are indeed transformed? Are we rising up to the occasion here? Passing the buck, I'm going to come back to you. Alvaro?
Well, let me start by perhaps answering the question on the cost, because I think it's very important. I think one of the messages I would like to give today is that the cost of inaction is much higher than the cost of action. We saw in the video we were discussing around the estimates of the World Bank of around 400 billion annually. But the costs that were also presented were 12 trillion. The 12 trillion, if you decompose them, you see 6 trillion in terms of public health costs. You talk about 3 trillion of environmental costs, 1 trillion in terms of food waste. So I think the numbers we're talking about are massive. And the type of investments that we need are also a fraction of that. We're talking, the tool will tell us later that we're talking around more than 40 billion per year in ODA, which is still a tiny fraction of the overall investments that goes to food systems. Only around 10 billion, 10, 11 billion to agriculture, 15, 16 billion going to emergency assistance. So still we see some imbalances. And I think the president of Somalia made it very clear that if we really want to take people out of hunger, out of poverty. We need also investments. We just don't only need assistance. When you're talking about the poor, that's something that we very much stress. It's not enough with having investments or with giving food aid. Those investments need to be very much focused on pro-poor rural policies, on the bottom 20%. And this is starting to be understood by many of the big international financial institutions. It's being understood in many cases by governments on the bilateral aid. We need to focus on investments, not only assistance, on investments on that bottom part of the pyramid. Any investment needs to make sure, when we're talking about access to markets, about value chains, how is it affecting the ones that are in poverty? I would like to not just to talk about subsistence farming, but actually about productive farming, about small-scale producers. How can we get many of them into these global value chains? How can we make sure that the investments are really touching the lives of those and not just of the bigger type of entities?
And how does the World Bank respond to that same question?
So I guess in a somewhat complementary way, which is that, so I've been speaking with my colleagues in the agricultural global practice, and they tell me that the world spends about $800 billion each year on public support to agriculture, right? Now this is supposed to help, mainly to help farmers, but at the most about a third of this money actually helps farmers. The other part goes to a whole lot of other things. And because of the way this money is spent, it encourages practices that are inefficient for the farm economy, and it's bad for the world's environment. The other thing that my colleague Martin here, he tells me, is that just repurposing just 10% of this money, 10% of this money is a large amount, which is 80 billion, right? We can simultaneously do 4 things. The first one is we can improve food security, we can make healthy eating affordable, we can reduce poverty, and we can bring GHG emissions down by 40%. So the first time he told me this, my first reaction was, wow, you know, you can do all of this stuff just with 10% reallocation. But then the next question is how? And I think this is something that everybody has to get involved. The European Union, the United States, big countries like India and Brazil, and everybody else, right? Now, but the other point is that even if the spending is made better, the world will need another 50% of this, which is another 400 billion. So the total amount of spending that we probably need if we do this right is more than $1 trillion, because it's a huge task, it's a difficult task, right? Now, it's not easy, ma'am, it's not easy to make a case for more spending, right? So one area, for example, is agricultural research and development. So I read a very good, I read a really good report by the Gates Foundation recently that agricultural research is among the top 4 investments with the highest economic returns, along with education quality, maternal and child health, and trade. And the returns to some of this are like more than 40%, right? The number that is cited in this report for additional R&D is about 5.5 billion each year for the next 7 years. And coincidentally, by the way, the World Bank provides about $6 billion of support for this one. So we will actually talk about these numbers and so on as we're trying to reform the World Bank and scale it up. One last thing is that this is not chump change, right? 6 billion here, 5.5 billion there, but it's just a small fraction of what we need. And unlike education and health systems, food systems are mainly private. They're not public, right? So what we will need more than anything else is private sector participation in financing these transformations. And it's really good that the head of IFAD is actually knows this business very well, because he used to be at the IFC, and he has a master's in finance from Princeton University. So I think we're gonna take his advice.
He didn't pay him to say all these nice things about him. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's just get some help, just to scale up the conversation here, to find out what we need to do to complement traditional efforts to help partner countries in financing and transforming food systems. So to help us along with that conversation, I'd like to invite the president of the Islamic Development Bank, Mohammed Sulaiman Al Jasser, if you can join the conversation, please. Thank you. Also the Vice President of Finance for the African Development Bank, Hassatu Nsele. Please come and join us. Let's start with the President of the Islamic Development Bank. The challenges, the potential to reform the international financial architecture. Do we have scope and space to be innovative here? What tools are we using?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much first for inviting me to participate in this August forum that I hope will provide some lessons we can all take home and act upon. We at the Islamic Development Bank have 57 member countries. 29 of them are least developed. So we know what poverty is. We know what development or underdevelopment means. Most importantly, it's really basic infrastructure that needs to be addressed non-stop, continuously. I mean, I was in the Gambia and the president was telling me, you know, thank you, Mohammed. It used to take us 12 hours from this village to this village by car. You gave us a loan, we built this highway, now it only takes 4 hours. So it was transformational in terms of even moving food and people and all of that. Well, but challenges, as was mentioned, get multiplied with the climate change now. So the farmers are not only dealing with basic infrastructure or transportation, but climate change. We in the Islamic Development Bank, we work on the steady state requirements of our member countries, but also we take the crises that befall them unannounced, like the climate change. So we, with the Arab development institutions, we put together a package of $24 billion to help member countries finance their climate-friendly projects, be it in the renewable energy, be it in other areas. Of course, the food problem is a very serious one. You need the calories because before you can do anything else, be it education or what have you. So we put together also a package of $10.5 billion last July. Now it's been almost a year. And that is basically to finance, 1/3 of that is to finance restocking of basic foods and grains. And the rest is supposed to go to finance development of agriculture. Because to tell you the truth, as an economist, now this is a confession, I think we failed in forgetting that agriculture is the most important ingredient of any economic development program. I mean, some very poor countries were spending money on steel mills when their basic agriculture is still not feeding its own people. We know from economic history, and those countries that have made it, they first kept people on the land. So they are on the land. They're not moving. They're not migrating. Yesterday we were talking about migration. And then they discovered that they can produce more than they need, so they can send it to the urban areas. Urban areas now, they are fed, so they can get busy with industrialization. So we need to bring back that theme to our development paradigm and do it in collaboration. Not the Islamic Development Bank, not even the largest of us all, the World Bank can do it. I mean, the challenges are huge, but I can tell you, smaller collaborations that we have been engaged in have made a huge difference. We should not belittle those when we address them. And finance is only one element. It's a critical element, but I think collaborating and ensuring that we are on the right track, investing in agriculture and then investing in people's health and then investing in education is what will make all the difference.
Going back to basics. All right, let's hear from the African Development Bank. We've talked about the need for innovative new sources of financing, but also recapitalizing, right? Recapitalizing the MDBs, the IFIs, so that we can attain these outcomes. Your thoughts on that?
Thank you.
It should be on.
Is this working?
Right?
Is it working? Okay, very well. Thank you very much, and thanks, for having the African Development Bank invited here to discuss this very important issue. To the first question that you posed, yes, there are opportunities. There is to be had at the IFI level, at the multilateral development banks level. So basically, there was a group that was put together by the G20 in order to evaluate the strength of MDBs and the capacity to respond to the global development challenges. And multilateral development banks represent 60% of the non-concessional official financing architecture. But they've been asked to evolve. They've been asked to play a greater role in addressing the global public challenge, the global public issues that we're seeing, because they are, deemed to be well-placed and uniquely equipped in order to do that. And financial innovation is one of the key aspects of this, because as you said, rightly, yes, we need all those policies, we need all those initiatives, but you need to have the resources in order to be able to implement them. And so financial innovation is at the center. And I'm very proud to say that the African Development Bank, we've been spearheading financial innovation for a very simple reason. We have a formidable mandate for Africa, and relatively our capital resources are limited. So we need to go beyond shareholder capital. We need to use financial instruments in order to catalyze more development into the continent. And it's in that spirit that we've collaborated with the Inter-American Development Bank and developed a solution for increasing or for rechanneling SDRs to multilateral development banks. Because the G20 had a very interesting quote where they say, right now, it is a time of great risk and great opportunities. And the SDRs present a great opportunities, because basically, by lending to multilateral development banks, we, MDBs, multilateral development banks, will be able to have a leveraging impact of 3 to 4. So just imagine, $25 billion lent to the MDB system at zero cost to the SDR, taxpayer, is $100 billion of immediate lending capacity made available to our institution. So I like, what you said, it's no longer, let's not go to advocacy. Now, we need to move forward, go beyond the advocacy to go to action. This is exactly that. And it can be a game changer. The MDBs are uniquely placed, to play this role. And let's say that it's been, it's taken a lot of time, but I think that we are at a place now, and this was said by one of the previous speaker, like the president of Somalia actually, that traditional financing needs to evolve, and this is exactly where we are. There needs to be a reset, because the SDGs are not going to be met in 2030. And at the pace at which we're going, they are not even going to be met in 2040. I'm sorry, that's the reality of it. So either we continue and say, have those visions about, how great we want to be, what the great things that we want to do. But if we do not follow that with action, with resources, we're not going to go anywhere. So there are innovative solutions available out there. Let us all be innovative. And I'm not talking just about the MDBs, because they have been, but also the shareholders. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We are all in conversation with each other. The representative from Kenya also spoke about the financial architecture not working for the particular environments, Africa, and how we need to innovate, how we need to collaborate, how we need the partnerships. We are running out of time, but I do want to ask a final question around the importance of data, because that's what will shift the needle. That's what will inform our path forward as we go to our next segment. Perhaps you'd like to talk to us about that very briefly as we wrap up.
Yes, thank you very much. So we will be launching we are launching the 3FS, a tool that will be measuring the flows in terms of food systems. Up to now, we had more of national budgets on agriculture, but we need to take into consideration the entire food systems, and this will make a big change. And I think the president of Islamic Development Bank was mentioning it. Food systems is not just about agriculture, it's about distribution, it's about transportation, it's about storage, it's about commercialization, access to markets. So all of this needs to be taken into consideration and measuring how we can be able to invest in these areas, as I said before, so that they can also impact on the bottom of the pyramid. And these are the people that we should very much focusing on, making sure how we are investing and how it's transforming the lives and transforming the communities. For this, it's not just one sector, it's taking into consideration all of these sectors, and I think this tool will help in informing many of the policies, just as the national pathways have been also fundamental on seeing how we can channel the resources towards the specific budgets.
President of IFAD, Alvaro Lario, thank you very much for joining us. Indamit Gill, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist of the World Bank, Mohammed Suleiman Al-Jasser, President of the Islamic Development Bank, and Hassatu Nsele, Vice President of Finance for the African Development Bank. Thank you very much. You may take your seats. And if I may ask for you to get ready as my panelists are leaving the stage, the Prime Minister of Niger, Ministers of Peru, Norway, Secretary of State for France, plus the Gates Foundation, if you can prepare and come forward. The Prime Minister of Niger, His Excellency Mamadou Oumoudu, if you can rejoin us, sir. And His Excellency Segundo Regulado, Vice Minister of Agriculture for Peru. We'll figure out where to sit. Thank you. And it's a pleasure, the Minister of International Development for Norway, Her Excellency Anne Finarim, if you can come forward, please. We have the Secretary of State for France. Norway, yeah. I like that you are so proactive, Secretary of State for France, Her Excellency Chrysula Zakharopoulos. Welcome. And of course, Roger Foris, Vice President of the Gates Foundation. They're exchanging business cards, I saw that. Welcome, welcome. We've been hearing a lot about the case study, Niger, because it has been such an exciting development. It is a demonstration of what happens when we collaborate, when we partner with each other, and when we innovate. And so you will see, ladies and gentlemen, from the data that will be presented, we will explore the significance of the new 3Fs tool that can be applied to any country, but has been piloted in several countries, including Niger and Peru. We will start this morning with Niger. I do want to spend just a few minutes talking through the data and what it tells us. It is one of the first countries in the world, together with Peru, that is piloting this innovative tool. IFAD and the World Bank have been developing it with other support from FAO, OECD, GAIN, ICA, and ITA, to help countries target and mobilize financial flows for food systems transformation. Now, the 3Fs aims to give decision makers like you real-time data on financial flows to food systems. I've been informed that the 3Fs are really based on the basic principle that impactful financing decisions are a function of both timeliness and quality of financial information. Let's just look at some of the results of the 3Fs prototype and what it actually means for Niger. It looks at domestic funding, and you've also heard about ODA, how this is being delivered to transform food systems. And we'll hear the question of Niger. Let us start with you then, Your Excellency. So the trend of government financing, you touched on it in your opening address. the trend in the spending of the government of Niger on food systems, despite a global context of crises that we've been speaking about, the war, we're just coming out from a pandemic. Niger has increased. It has actually increased domestic research mobilization, which is government spending to food systems by 69%, almost 70% increase of the past 4 years. How did you achieve that?
Merci beaucoup. Effectivement, le Niger est un pays qui fait face à de nombreux défis. Comme vous le savez, nous sommes un pays qui est très affecté par les changements climatiques de par notre position géographique, juste au sud du Sahara, en plein milieu du Sahel. Compte tenu de cela, avec l'élévation de la température, le Niger fait face à un défi énorme de changement climatique. À cela s'ajoute le défi sécuritaire, puisque vous savez que nous sommes un pays affecté par l'insécurité liée au terrorisme, notamment à l'ouest de notre pays, à l'est également, à la frontière avec le Nigeria. Et également, donc, nous sommes voisins des pays qui sont actuellement dans une situation assez difficile, notamment le Mali et le Burkina Faso. Malgré cela, nous tenons bon, effectivement, comme vous l'avez dit, comment se fait-il que nous puissions investir autant d'argent dans l'agriculture? Cela est lié à notre politique, l'initiative 3N, qui est une priorité nationale, qui fait partie des 7 grandes priorités que j'ai définies dans ma déclaration de politique générale. Et du fait de cette priorité qui consiste à améliorer la production agricole de façon à ce que, comme son nom l'indique, les Nigériens puissent nourrir les Nigériens, nous consacrons beaucoup d'argent au développement agricole. Et c'est ainsi que, effectivement, comme vous l'avez constaté, en 4 ans, nous avons augmenté la part du financement qui va à l'agriculture de 70%.
Your Excellency, more money is absolutely great. Of course, we all need more money. We need more money to transform food systems. But just talk to us then about what the government is spending this money on. Where is this money going?
Évidemment, pour transformer notre agriculture, nous devons investir dans l'outil de production agricole, c'est-à-dire d'abord la domestication de l'eau. Nous avions une agriculture traditionnelle qui était basée sur la pluie. Maintenant, nous passons progressivement à une agriculture où l'eau est domestiquée, l'eau de surface d'abord à travers les barrages et les seuils d'épandage, mais aussi l'eau du sous-sol, car le Niger est un pays qui est très riche en eau de sous-sol, que ce soit les nappes de faible profondeur ou les nappes de profondeur beaucoup plus importante. Le Niger est un pays qui est un réservoir d'eau souterraine. Et donc, nous avons ce système de capture d'eau pour lesquels nous investissons également beaucoup d'argent. Nous avons également d'autres domaines dans lesquels nous investissons beaucoup. C'est la protection de la terre, mais aussi la connectivité, que ce soit les routes, la création des marchés, et également dans la transformation agricole. Et donc, cela fait que nous investissons 40% de notre ressource affectée à l'agriculture, à l'investissement. Environ 25% sont consacrés à la vulgarisation agricole et 23% à l'alimentation d'urgence parce que, quoi qu'on en dise, nous sommes encore un pays qui, du fait des conflits, a encore besoin de soutenir les populations en situation d'insécurité alimentaire sévère ou parfois modérée. Voilà donc ce que nous faisons avec notre argent. Merci beaucoup.
So transformative investments, emergency events. I'd like to find out then from you again, Your Excellency, before I bring in my panelists. We are in a very tight fiscal situation. We've spoken about the impact of the war, the pandemic, and we know that Niger is a low-income country. How are your partners supporting you in this journey, and what more would you like to see?
Effectivement, nous avons beaucoup d'appui de la communauté internationale, notamment les institutions multilatérales de financement comme la Banque mondiale, la BAD, mais aussi les institutions bilatérales comme l'Agence française de développement. Ces institutions nous financent à travers des prêts à des taux très concessionnels qui nous permettent effectivement de pouvoir booster notre agriculture. Indépendamment de ces frais, nous avons également aussi des appuis budgétaires qui proviennent de ces institutions multilatérales et des institutions bilatérales ainsi que de la coopération bilatérale. Donc, globalement, sur les financements que je viens d'indiquer, nous avons 75% qui viennent de la communauté internationale à travers les prêts et aussi à travers les aides bilatérales et multilatérales. 24 à 25% proviennent directement des ressources budgétaires nationales.
Thank you, Excellency. Let's bring in Peru here. I understand that you are also piloting the 3FCs and actually considering implementing them at a regional level. How important is this data for you? Peru.
Sí, muchas gracias. Qué grato y necesario tener estos espacios para poder compartir, debatir, compartir temas de interés nacional, regional, nacional, mundial, ¿no? Efectivamente, previo a esto, quería comentar que el Perú en el año 2021 asumió el compromiso de transitar hacia sistemas alimentarios sostenibles, con el único objetivo de llegar al 2030 con la finalidad pues, de formalizar y cumplir con el objetivo de desarrollo sostenible, hambre cero. Para ello, pues, estamos trabajando intensamente. Es cierto, el sector agrícola en el Perú ha sido fuertemente golpeado. Hemos tenido el COVID, hemos tenido el tema climático. En los últimos meses, este año, Perú ha sido fuertemente golpeado por el tema de las lluvias, las inundaciones, la sequía, las heladas. Sin perjuicio de ello, nosotros venimos trabajando y qué importantes son estas alianzas para poder pues, sacar adelante el sector agricultura, ¿no? Lo comentábamos y siempre decimos, sin agricultura pues no hay alimentación y Perú es un país que se caracteriza por brindar pues, tema de alimentos a nivel regional y a nivel mundial. En dicho contexto, el uso aún inicial, incipiente de esta herramienta 3FS nos ha permitido hacer una primera aproximación respecto al gasto público destinado a los sistemas alimentarios, por lo que en esta primera etapa consideramos que es una herramienta útil. Sin embargo, cabe precisar y cabe resaltar que estas estimaciones aún no son las definitivas, van a haber pues variaciones, toda vez que en esta etapa inicial, este aplicativo, este programa, solamente ha contemplado lo que es el gasto del gobierno nacional. Aún no han considerado lo que es el gasto que se hace a nivel de gobiernos regionales, a nivel de gobiernos locales. El Perú, a nivel de la descentralización que venimos realizando, destina recursos importantes a los gobiernos regionales y a los gobiernos locales. Más del 40% están destinados a lo que es sistemas alimentarios. Entonces, consideramos que con esta data, con este porcentaje, estos resultados después, al finalizar, van a variar considerablemente. Entonces nosotros estamos seguros que así será y estas cifras iniciales que tenemos van a tener una variación significativa. Nosotros recordemos y quiero resaltar que el marco del proceso de descentralización, nosotros